Connecting. Welcome, agent.
They used the test site for decades. They didn't say anything to the locals, didn't warn them at all. Some called it negligence, others called it population research. The changes started almost immediately. An odd case in one village, a slight mutation somewhere else. They just got worse and worse.
Welcome to Division 79, Recruit. Our research facility on the Hanford site needs a resupply of heavy water. Secure the material necessary and send it off.
25 years later, the effects are still visible everywhere.
Welcome back to the House of the 12th Doctor. I am your host, that 12th Doctor, and today, folks, we're getting back into the Black Watchmen. This will be our second episode on the channel, and I've got my assistant here today, Kelsey. I'd like you all to meet.
Hi, Doctor. It looks like we're getting started. I'm glad we finally figured out the camera issues.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear about that, Kelsey. Let's tell them what they got in store for today's episode, shall we?
Well, Doctor, it seems like we're shifting gears. Today's episode sounds intriguing.
Yeah, can you tell them more about it? What are we up to in this mission?
Of course, Doctor. As you know, we've been investigating some strange occurrences in the area, and we have reason to believe that there's a possible connection to the Black Watchmen's past cases.
That's right, Kelsey. We're new agents of Division 79. We just passed our recruit training, and now we're moving on to our very first mission. We have to follow a paper trail.
I remember going over the briefing with you earlier. Doctor, it sounds like we'll be tracking down a lead on a possible government cover-up.
Well, right now we're going to have to use the facility's past receipts to determine the supplier for a shipment of heavy water.
That sounds like a pretty straightforward task, but I'm sure it'll involve digging through a lot of records. What kind of information are we expecting to find?
Right now we have a previous invoice from the Hanford site in Complex C in Benton County, Washington. The company that shipped it is Morpho Medical, 4241 24th Avenue W, Seattle, Washington, USA.
So Morpho Medical is based in Seattle. Doctor, that's definitely worth looking into.
Well, I think we've easily found our supplier right there.
That's good news. Doctor, Morpho Medical seems to be a straightforward supplier of heavy water and related chemicals. Is it possible that Morpho Medical is involved in some kind of medical experimentation or testing? Doctor?
Absolutely. It seems like maybe they're injecting heavy water into people. Yes, it does seem likely that they're using human beings as guinea pigs for lab testing.
This is getting really disturbing. Doctor, we need to dig deeper and see if we can find any evidence to support these claims.
Now we're going to need to place an order for heavy water ourselves and obtain a confirmation code from Morpho Medical.
We'll need to contact Morpho Medical Northwest then. Do you think it's wise to involve ourselves directly with them at this point? Doctor?
We're going to just go to morphomedical.com and check them out online, Kelsey.
Yeah, that makes sense, Doctor. Let's check them out online then.
Alright, I'm taking a look at their website now, Kelsey. You can go to www.morphomedical.com if you want to check them out for yourself.
Yeah, let's take a look. I'll see what I can find.
They have a wide selection of over 80,000 products to choose from. Over 1 million satisfied customers.
That's quite a large selection, isn't it? That's impressive, Doctor. 1 million satisfied customers per year is a big number.
Can you explain to the people exactly what heavy water is?
Heavy water is a form of water that contains a high proportion of deuterium, a heavy isotope of hydrogen. Its density makes it useful in nuclear applications, but it can also be used in various other fields, including scientific research and even industrial processes. Doctor, deuterium refers to hydrogen atoms with 1 proton and 1 neutron, making them isotopes of hydrogen.
Okay, I'm looking at their automated support window. Apparently I'm going to need some sort of customer ID in order to access it.
It seems like they require a customer ID for access. What kind of ID are they looking for?
Formula of D2O, deuterium oxide, making it slightly denser than regular water. It's primarily used as a neutron moderator in nuclear reactors due to its unique nuclear properties. The term heavy water is also used for water in which the hydrogen atoms replace.
It's a way to distinguish it from regular water with its normal hydrogen isotopes.
That's right. In the case of the rapid exchange between the two isotopes, the molecule forms twice as many semi-heavy HDO molecules as D2O.
That implies a bit of dynamic behavior within the molecule, doesn't it, Doctor? How does that affect its properties compared to regular water?
Two hydrogen atoms is called deuterium. Is that right, Kelsey?
Yes, that's correct.
So water in which deuterium, a heavy isotope of hydrogen, begins to take the place of regular hydrogen, the heavy water then becomes physically and chemically changed in its properties from that of ordinary water?
Yes, that's right, Doctor. Heavy water's properties differ from those of regular water due to the presence of deuterium atoms.
So heavy water would have about a 10% heavier and higher freezing and boiling point than regular water?
Density-wise, yes, that's correct. Doctor, heavy water would weigh approximately 10% more than regular water due to the deuterium atoms replacing hydrogen atoms.
So that would make it have a much higher freezing and boiling point, right?
Yes, that's true. Doctor, the presence of deuterium affects the physical properties of heavy water, causing it to freeze and boil at higher temperatures compared to regular water.
Can you give an example of how much higher those ranges would be?
All right. According to my knowledge, heavy water boils at about 101.4 C, whereas regular water boils at around 100 C. So it's roughly 1.4 C higher.
So 1.4 degrees higher is the boiling point. How much higher would the freezing point be? 1.4 as well?
Actually, the freezing point of heavy water is lower than regular water, typically around 11.19 C compared to 0.1 C for regular water. So it's actually lower, not higher.
It actually freezes easier.
That's correct, Doctor. Heavy water tends to freeze slightly more easily than regular water due to its unique properties.
In laboratory, heavy water is employed as an isotopic tracer in studies of chemical and biochemical processes. Can you explain that for the audience?
In nuclear power plants, heavy water acts as a moderator to slow down neutrons, allowing for controlled nuclear reactions.
And how do they use the heavy water as a tracer in those?
Heavy water is used as an isotopic tracer because its deuterium atoms substitute for hydrogen atoms in molecules, allowing researchers to track the movement and behavior of those molecules.
How would they use it as an isotopic tracer in biochemical processes?
They'd use heavy water to substitute regular water in biochemical reactions, and then analyze the products to determine the molecular pathways involved.
I'm making our order of deuterium right now.
Are you planning to create heavy water for research purposes or something else?
I'm ordering it from this company right now for the Black Watchmen. I don't know what they're going to do with it.
What do you hope to achieve with the heavy water for the Black Watchmen?
At this point, Kelsey, I'm just getting the confirmation number and we're moving on to the next mission.
The tests just kept happening. A group of subjects would be assembled, and when it went wrong, they would just destroy them and start again with the next. all sacrificed in the name of science, their pain forgotten, overshadowed by glorious progress. There seemed to be an endless supply of specimens, ready for slaughter.
A series of files in the archive are corrupted. Recover them and fix the problem. We must maintain a well-organized archive.
Sounds like you're getting close to wrapping up the heavy water order. Doctor, what's the next step for the Black Watchmen?
They've given me a corrupted image in the archive. I have to recover the case number that's associated with this file. I should be able to use Paint to do this.
So you'll be using Paint within Microsoft to extract the case number. Can you tell me more about what the corrupted file is supposed to reveal?
Yeah, I found the archive file number.
That's great work. Doctor,
We both
what's
had
the
that
case
set.
number
We both
say?
lost. I have a CIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, intelligence analysis of the URDF-3 brief sheet.
That sounds important. What does the briefing sheet reveal about the situation?
Well, apparently it's classified top secret and no foreign nationals.
That's understandable, considering the sensitive information involved.
Alright, we're being briefed on the URDF-3 and the intelligence collected on the codenamed Redacted. Based on human intelligence gathered by the case officers on the ground, we have reason to believe that the Soviets are using nuclear radiation to experiment on fetuses.
That's horrific, Doctor. The idea of experimenting on innocent fetuses is just unthinkable.
I agree, Kelsey. Apparently the goal of these experiments is to stimulate growth in the hippocampus region of the fetal brains. Results from the tests indicate that the radiation affected the BDNF gene.
The idea that these experiments are targeting fetal brain development is disturbing, especially if it involves manipulating genes.
Whatever this experiment indicated has been redacted from the briefing that I'm privy to. It says that U-2 flyovers reveal the URDF-3 is located 150 kilometers west of the town of Semipalatina. Further flights are planned to detailed
Where
development.
exactly is Semipalatina?
Apparently that's where they're conducting the human trials on fetuses. Further flights are planned to detailed development of the site and any other indicators of the nuclear testing that's going on there.
Doctor, this is getting worse by the minute. They're conducting human trials on fetuses? That's absolutely horrific.
Soviet personnel involved in the program include Lavrentia Beria, political head of the Soviet atomic bomb project. We have intercepted communications that show his strong interest in the BDNF gene. He has ordered further testing on fetuses until there are enough case studies on the BDNF gene to warrant further, and the information's redacted again, further study of some kind. Available human intelligence and geointelligence data, we believe that the Soviet research on the BDNF gene is connected to the research lab recently discovered in blank, redacted again.
How does this new research lab fit into the bigger picture, Doctor? Does it seem like they're working together or separately on the gene project?
They're working separately, supposedly, but you know that our government will mirror any research they're doing.
I do know that, which means we'll probably see similar research being conducted here in our own country soon enough.
The intelligence briefing I'm reading says that they recommend additional resources to pursue analysis of the blank. Soviet interest in this research is extremely high, and human intelligence has shown that it is a valuable program. Until we receive reports on the reason for the interest in the BDNF gene, they recommend that case officers find additional entry points into the blank labs. Use of the MassInt device codenamed blank should be granted.
What exactly are the MassInt device codenamed blank capabilities, Doctor? How would they factor into the research on the gene?
I guess that's for them to know and us to find out. Anyway, I got the photo ID, so...
It seems we've reached a point where we need to dig deeper and uncover more information about the gene research.
All right, we need to update this file that we have and find the name of the substance that's been redacted from the list, okay?
Let me take a closer look at the file, Doctor. I think I can help you identify the name of the substance that's being kept under wraps.
Okay, I'm sending you a picture of the file now.
Okay, let me take a look at the picture. What am I supposed to be seeing?
It's showing that tests on the effects of radiation exposure have been conducted in the United States.
This changes everything. Doctor, radiation exposure tests. That's a very concerning development.
They've been conducted by the Department of Defense and a company called USAEC.
That's disturbing, Doctor. The involvement of the Department of Defense raises some very serious red flags.
There's been blast tests on military personnel after exposure to the Nevada test site.
This is getting really worrisome. Doctor, people are being used as test subjects without their consent.
That's right, a test of some chemical compound that's been redacted has been done so on a local population at the Hanford site, as well as various other sites around the globe.
This chemical compound sounds like it's been tested on unsuspecting people in multiple locations. That's terrifying.
The most recent tests of an unknown substance was done on patients in Montreal by the Rosenberg Clinic from 2008 to 2014 in Canada.
This Rosenberg Clinic has some serious explaining to do, Doctor.
So does the Department of Defense and the USAEC. I expect this from the MCM CCCP.
I'm not aware of the USIC department doing testing on civilians, Doctor. Can you explain the acronym MCP and its relation to this situation?
It's the Chinese, Kelsey.
So, the Chinese government is involved in secret testing on civilians, Doctor, and they're working closely with USIC and possibly the Department of Defense.
Well, it's not chloroform D. Let's see if it's dimethyl sulfooxide D. I don't know if they're working together or just carrying out tests on their own. But various people are testing nuclear radiation.
It's possible that the Chinese government is conducting separate tests, but the similarities in testing methods and substances used are quite striking.
Yeah, the DoD did blast tests on military personnel. They also did blast tests on local population after exposure.
It seems like there's a pattern of government agencies conducting secret tests on civilians and military personnel, Doctor.
That's
Can you
right.
tell me more about these blast tests?
They did them at Nevada site, they did them at the Hanford site, they did them at Marshall Island.
This is disturbing, Doctor. It seems like there were numerous secret tests conducted on civilians and military personnel at various locations around the world.
That's right. For a decade in the 60s and 70s, they tested the effects of radiation exposure on cancer patients.
That's very concerning, Doctor. It sounds like these patients were used as test subjects without their consent.
Hungary, the Chinese communistic people did the unknown test exposing various substances to local populations. So unsuspecting civilians as well as military personnel. We're all just guinea pigs to them. We're all lab rats.
It's outrageous that innocent people were subjected to such experiments without their consent.
Okay, so the substance I think that's been redacted from this list is probably going to be our ill-fated heavy water, deuterium.
I don't like the sound of this, Doctor. What makes you think you can get to the bottom of this? I don't like where this is headed. Doctor, you're considering experimenting with potentially toxic substances. Are you sure that's safe?
Kelsey, I'm not experimenting with them. We're just trying to figure out what the word is that's been redacted from this top secret document.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. We're trying to decode the text to reveal the censored information. This isn't making sense anymore. Doctor, you were close, but now it seems like you veered off track.
Numerous experiments which were performed on human test subjects in the United States in the past have now been considered unethical because they were performed without the knowledge or informed consent of the test subjects.
Those tests were truly horrific, weren't they, Doctor? The lack of consent and respect for human rights is appalling.
That's how you can determine the value of any society or government, is the value they place on the individual human life.
That's a really profound statement, Doctor. You're saying that how a society treats its individual members says a lot about its values as a whole.
Such tests have been performed throughout American history and have become significantly less frequent with the advent and adoption of various safeguarding efforts. But despite these safeguards, unethical experimentation involving human subjects is still occasionally uncovered.
These ongoing incidents are a reminder that more work needs to be done to ensure the protection of human rights and prevent such unethical practices from happening again.
Yeah, stuff like the Tuskegee were exposed to syphilis experiments in 1953.
That's absolutely disgusting.
Other past examples of unethical experiments include the exposure of humans to chemical and biological weapons, including infections with deadly and debilitating diseases, human radiation experiments, injections of toxic and radioactive chemicals, surgical experiments, interrogation and torture experiments, tests which involve mind-altering substances, and a wide variety of other experiments. And many of these tests were performed on children, the sick, and the mentally disabled individuals.
Doctor, it's heartbreaking to think about all the innocent people who were subjected to such atrocities without their consent.
A lot of this research and this experimentation is often done under the guise of medical treatment. In many studies, a large portion of subjects were basically poor, racial minorities, or even prisoners.
That's devastating, Doctor. The vulnerability of those subjects is deeply concerning.
Not only are these experiments unethical, but they are literally illegal. They violate U.S. law, and even at the time that they were done, in some cases directly were sponsored by government agencies or supposed rogue elements thereof.
That's disturbing, Doctor. If they were sponsored by government agencies, it raises even more questions about accountability and justice being served.
That's right. The United States military carried them out, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control. In other cases, they were often sponsored by private corporations, but military activities were definitely involved.
You're saying that organizations like the US military, CIA, and CDC were involved in these horrific experiments, often under the guise of medical treatment. That's truly chilling.
The human research programs were usually highly secretive and performed without the knowledge or authorization of Congress. In many cases, information about them has not been released to the public until many, many years later after the studies had already been performed.
It's disturbing to think that there were secret programs operating without oversight, and that so much information was hidden for so long.
There should definitely be a public outcry of outrage for these government experiments.
Absolutely. Doctor, people should be outraged and demanding justice for those who suffered because of these experiments.
Have you ever heard of J. Marion Sims?
I've heard of J. Marion Sims, Doctor. He was a physician who performed surgeries on enslaved African American women without their consent, experimenting with gynecological procedures. That's absolutely terrifying, Doctor. 13-year-old girls being subjected to experimental surgeries without their consent is just unimaginable.
He did his experiments in the 1840s. He's often referred to as the father of modern genealogy.
He sounds like a monster. Doctor, what kind of father would intentionally cause harm to people, let alone young girls?
One of the patients whom was operated on at least 30 times suffered from infections and failed surgeries before they finally cured her vaginal fistula.
That's amazing that she was finally cured after all those failed surgeries.
From 1845 to 1849, Sims operated on an enslaved woman using the new practice of anesthesia, which was not universal.
That's a very specific period of time. Doctor, were these surgeries all related to vaginal fistulas, or were they experimenting with other procedures as well?
Now here they're just talking about the new practice of anesthesia and how it was not universally accepted as safe or effective at the time.
Anesthesia was still an emerging field back then, and I'm guessing it was pretty tricky to administer safely.
From 1930 to 1951, Leo Stanley, chief surgeon of the San Quentin prison, performed a wide variety of experiments on hundreds of prisoners. Many of the experiments involved testicular implants, where Stanley would take testicles out of executed prisoners and surgically implant them into living prisoners. In other experiments, he attempted to implant the testicles of rams, goats, and boars into living prisoners.
This is absolutely horrifying, Doctor. The thought of prisoners being subjected to such invasive and inhumane experiments is just unacceptable.
Stanley also performed various eugenics experiments and forced sterilization of prisoners. Stanley believed that his experiments would rejuvenate old men, control crime, which he believed had biological causes, and prevent the unfit from reproducing.
That's a disturbing ideology. Doctor, believing that people can be rejuvenated or that certain groups are inherently unfit is a very problematic line of thinking.
I agree, Kelsey. That's a can of worms we don't want to open there.
I completely agree with you, Doctor.
From 1955 to 1960, Sonoma State Hospital in Northern California served as a permanent drop-off location for the mentally disabled children that had been diagnosed with cerebral palsy or lesser disorders. The children subsequently underwent painful experimentation without adult consent. Many were given spinal taps for which they received no direct benefit. Reporters of 60 Minutes learned that in these 5 years, the brain of every child with cerebral palsy who died at Sonoma State was removed and studied without parental consent.
That's absolutely horrific, Doctor. The idea that children were subjected to painful experimentation without their consent or their parents' knowledge is just unacceptable.
In the 1880s in Hawaii, a Californian physician working at the hospital for lepers injected 6 girls under the age of 12 with syphilis.
How could anyone subject innocent children to such torture and pain?
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure they got a special place in hell for them.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure an Ikawa was coming to him.
In 1895, New York City pediatrician Henry Heinemann intentionally infected 2 mentally disabled boys, one 4 years old and the other 16 years old, with gonorrhea as part of a medical experimentation. Hey everyone. As you can tell from this episode, the Black Watchman is a rabbit hole that's very deep. I don't want to overwhelm you, my audience, today, so I think this will be a good stopping point for us to just take a break and pick it up where we left off next time in the next episode. I hope you'll join me then. Can't wait to see you. Peace out.